All right. Welcome to RSG, the Cipher. We're here. We got a special show. The Cipher is our show where we kind of put an issue in the middle of the ring, and we just let the mic go and we kind of dig deep on that topic. And tonight we're going to talk about boxing. That's what we're going to get into. We're going to have a lot of fun with someone who's very familiar with being here at RSG and being part of the RSG family experience. And so we're going to have a great time. All of the callers are brought to you by Patreon. Patreon is where you can go support your favorite underground artist or performer. You can go to Patreon and support RSG on that. You can check it out. Just check out the information associated with this podcast. In the details, we'll give you a link to Patreon where you can support RSG and other artists who are trying to make something happen here in the space of performance and media. Tonight, we got a special guest. I got my guy Darnell with me, but we got the man, Dougie Fischer, editor of Ring Magazine, our friend of the program, we believe, someone who I wish I could have had a chance to connect with when I was out in LA recently.
Sorry about that.
But that's all right. We'll make it happen. I'm coming back, and I'll give you a little more heads up. And I want to actually.
Yeah, you should come out for Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury.
Yeah, I need some mentorship. I'm trying to get in the game. I'm about to bring it with me. You know how I get connected in these things. So I would need to talk to you about that. I love to be there. Boxing's become a staple of the things that we talk about on Real Sports Guys, and a lot of because our conversations with you. I mean, I think you've. As I told you, I grew up reading Ring Magazine. That was. You had Sports Illustrated and you had Ring Magazine, and to be able to, create a platform where I can bring that voice and that perspective to what we do, I think it is great. And so thank you for being here tonight and being part of this with myself and Darnell. I'm going to open up with, I know you're not a person, and we talked about this before, you don't get into MMA. And so I'm not going to ask you about the recent fight that happened in terms of MMA, but I'm going to talk to you more about the aftermath.
Right. That I saw. See, I didn't see the fight, but I saw the melee.
The melee, because boxing's had its share of its melees.
Whatever that was. I mean, different people call it different things.
Yes.
But it was some set tripping.
It's some set tripping, and when you in Vegas for a big fight, it's a whole different kind of. As I was saying, I was going out for a meeting, didn't even know a big fight was happening, and it happened to be Zab Judah and Floyd Mayweather. And I'm like, okay,
2006.
I'm gonna see if I can get a ticket.
Yeah,
and I somehow got a ticket, and I was sitting at the top, but it wasn't really a bad place in the house to watch that fight, and it was a fun fight to watch.
Yeah,
I felt like Zab Judah at times pushed Mayweather. It got really feisty, and next thing I know, everything breaks loose.
Yeah.
And Vegas has that kind of tension and excitement. So I'm watching it. It's going crazy. I'm not realizing I'm watching a real important moment. And then, as we know in the aftermath, what was it? Roger Mayweather already had some existing issues with the law.
Yeah.
And this was something that where he, obviously broke his probationary agreement or whatever it was, that caused him to have continued illegal problems. But, this is a fight game. And sometimes the fight games, everybody around it sprinkles out into the crowd.
Right.
How do commissions handle these kind of things? What ends up happening in your opinion, what kind of thing do you perceive might happen in this situation? Not on the MMA, but just what you know about Vegas and the commission.
Oh, I think the commission's definitely going to hand out some fines. Yeah. It's going to be a lot of money fined, maybe to both sides, but definitely to Team Khabib.
Yeah.
He's the one who lost his cool after the fight. I mean, he won the fight. He had everything, to the victor go the spoils, but he stayed angry.
Yes.
He bottled up all that anger for weeks, months maybe, and, I didn't see the fight, but from when I was told, you could tell he was pissed off even as he was giving Conor McGregor a beatdown.
Yeah.
Made Conor tap, and he was still full of piss and vinegar. Yeah. And there were people, chiding him and chastising him and taunting him outside of the cage, and he'd had enough. And I don't even have a problem with that. I can't have a double standard in boxing. Combat sports can't have a double standard because on the promotional side, and the side of the media. We like it when guys get into it. We like it when it's heated. You know, we like grudge matches when the beef is real, when the hate is real. It adds some spice to the promotion and to the storylines. It makes it easy to write about it, and because they're combat athletes and they're fighting, it's like, well, sure, you're supposed to be pissed off when it's a fist fight. You don't want the participants to be too cool-headed.
That's right.
But so when things spill out of control, there's some leeway. I mean, you know, when folks push and shove or headbutt a little bit at a weigh-in, it's not like the commission doles out fines or anything like that, or the fight's in jeopardy because folks mix it up a little bit, you know, on stage, for the promotion, in front of the fans and everything. But once the fight's over and it spills out into the arena, well, then there's that dangerous line you cross where are you inciting a riot?
Mm-hmm.
Are you putting the civilians, the fans,
right,
in danger? And you do have to control that, and you can't just let it go, because if it goes unchecked, sooner or later somebody will get hurt, and then you got lawsuits, and people will sue everybody. They'll sue the arena, they'll sue, you know, the commission, they'll sue obviously the promoters and the fighters or whatever. And I worry about it, you know, even when it's like you kind of can tell that the two fighters aren't really going to go at it, like we had at the LA presser for Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. They got up on stage, Tyson Fury talked that stuff, and Wilder kind of came at him. And I get the feeling that they're doing like a pro wrestling thing. It's a shtick, and I'm totally cool with it. And I understand where they're coming from. But there's all these other people on the stage, and sometimes they get worked up, and they're pushing. Both sides are pushing. And then you got folks who are up there in age, like in their 60s or 70s. And I think Shelly Finkel got knocked down or whatever. But he's no spring chicken. And he, you know, maybe he shouldn't have been on the stage. You know, maybe you know, he knew what he was doing or what he was getting into. But, you know, there have been folks who've been hurt in that kind of stuff before. I think when Mike Tyson lost his cool at the press conference for his fight with Lennox Lewis, the president of the WBC, he passed away a couple years ago, Jose Suleiman. He got knocked off the stage and he broke his leg or he broke his foot or something. And he was in a wheelchair for a long time. And I remember a publicist for the Hispanic language publicist for Top Rank got knocked off a stage once during one of Top Rank's. I don't remember what fight it was or which fighters got into it, but something happened and he fell off and he was on crutches for months. You know, so people can get hurt.
Yeah.
And you know, if it goes unchecked, sooner or later somebody's going to fall and you know, hurt their head or their neck or something. You know, God forbid, you know, something really awful happens. So it can't go unchecked. And it, you know, it is a bad look. It's a bad look for the UFC. It's a bad look for MMA. It's a bad look. I don't even know what country Khabib comes from. I've been calling him a Russian or whatever, but he's not. He's from some other part of that world. I don't know. Central Asia, Eastern Europe. You know? Yeah. Derek, Darnell, do you know where Khabib is from? But it don't understand. But you know, I think he's the first real standout worldwide, world-class athlete from that part of the world. And now, you know, going forward, when other folks come out of that area, because I've heard people, you know, fans of Khabib say, well, you know, he was retaliating because of what Conor McGregor did in New York City, throwing the dolly at the bus, and I get that, but with McGregor's situation, it wasn't in, you know, it wasn't in the arena, you know what I mean? It was like backstage, so to speak, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't make it right. Two wrongs don't make it right. But
one of the things you're hitting on, I think, is really interesting. Is like there is some cross-cultural dynamics in this, in a sense that there is. Well,
that's what I keep hearing folks say. Hey, the part of the world he comes from, you don't mess around like that. And I'm like, that's probably true, but because of the way he acted out this one time, And from what I understand, he usually keeps his cool and he's usually respectful.
Yeah.
He's just a beast in the octagon, in the cage, you know, and once the bell rings. But then after the fight, he's respectful. But because he lost his cool in this situation, you know, for every 10 MMA fans that are going to give him a pass, there's 100 casual fans who that's the only thing they've ever seen of Khabib. And they're going to say, well, folks from that part of the world are thugs. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so that's bad. That's not good. You know, and that's not fair to people from that part of the world or athletes, combat sports athletes from that part of the world. So, but anyways, you know, you had asked me about what the commission's going to do.
Yeah. And
when I think of the, you know, Zab Judah comes to mind because there was, you know, he lost his cool in that fight with Mayweather. And Roger Mayweather got in the ring. Now, listen, if they were following the rules, actually, Judah would have won that fight by disqualification because Roger Mayweather entered the ring during the round. You know, time wasn't called or anything like that, you know. And that's supposed to be an automatic disqualification. But, you know, the referee, which was Richard Steele, he didn't make that call. And so there is leeway in these situations and all. But definitely Zab Judah was fined heavily by the Nevada Commission. He was suspended. And the same thing happened after he was stopped by Kostya Tszyu in 2001. That's right. He got really upset, and he went after the ref.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And he put his glove in his neck, and then they cooled him down, and then he picked up a stool and threw it.
That's that New York jab.
It's like, okay, maybe you could have hit somebody. You're endangering folks. So the commission, they fined him, you know, it was thousands, maybe tens of thousands. And I think he was suspended, which meant, you know, he couldn't fight in Nevada, you know, until he served that suspension. And then he had to go before the commission and say, hey, I'm sorry. I've got my act together. I'll never do it again. And they forgive. They do. With high-level, well-known athletes that definitely generate revenue for, you know, that region, whatever jurisdiction it is. But certainly Las Vegas, certainly Nevada, you know, they're all about money.
Yeah,
they'll forgive you. You know, Mike Tyson, same thing after the ear bite fight. They fined him, I don't know, like maybe 10% of his purse, which was a lot of money. I mean, I think he was guaranteed $30 million for that second fight with Holyfield, maybe a little bit more. And then he was back. You know, I think they revoked his license, but after a year he could come back and ask for them to reinstate him, and they did. He came back 1 year later against Francois Botha. That was 20 years ago. That was actually one of the first major fights that I covered as a boxing writer.
Wow.
So, you know, even when you do like crazy stuff, you know, like mutilate a guy, you know, bite a guy's ear, not once but twice, you can come back. So I think worst case scenario, if the Nevada Commission suspends Khabib, it won't be for more than a year. Yeah. I don't think it'll be more for the year. Probably be like 6 months.
Yeah, and I think 6 months is probably right.
That I know of. He doesn't have a track record, so I just think he's going to lose some money. That's what I think is going to happen, really. And then they're going to be like, okay, you're suspended for 3 to 6 months, which today's athlete, that doesn't mean a whole lot. You know, today's combat sports athlete, the high-level guys, they only fight a couple times a year anyway, so it's not that big of a deal.
Well, we'll get into boxing here. A fight that kind of just got lost a little bit, and I thought said a lot for at least that division, was Porter and Danny Garcia. I mean, it was a fight that, you know, is really some, like, in a way, elimination fight, you know, for them to get an access. And, you know, Danny Garcia is, you know, Philly fighter who has always been awkward. I've never really seen him as being very athletic, whatever, but he just knows how to fight and win. And
strong. He's strong and he's pretty smart in there. He knows when to let his hands go. The technique's not perfect. Yeah. And, you know, I think his downfall, he doesn't let his hands go enough. He fights spots. He's kind of like a poor man's Canelo Alvarez. Yeah. He's not a knockout puncher, but he's got heavy hands. You got to respect him. If he catches you right and you don't have a great chin, he'll knock you out. But he could take a good shot. Yeah. And he's really at his best when he stakes out the center of the ring. Yeah. And he's counter punching you. you know. But, you know, there are limitations there. You can outmaneuver him, as I thought Lamont Peterson did, stretches of that fight. You can out-jab him, you know, like I thought Mauricio Herrera did for much of their fight, you know, back when he was fighting at 140 pounds. And Keith Thurman did that. He did kind of a stick and move, hit and run sort of strategy against Garcia, and it worked. And Porter did a little bit of that, but Porter was also Porter. He was aggressive and he was more active, and that was really the main difference. And I thought it could have been a draw, could have been 7-5 for Garcia. I had it 7-5 for Porter. Certainly over the second half, he just let his hands go more. And I agree, Garcia is a bit awkward because his dad didn't come from a boxing background. And the only trainer he's ever had was his dad.
That's right.
So when you have that father and son trainer, father, coach, talented son, boxer, that combination, and you had it all throughout the amateur career and the pro career, then they basically develop their own style. That's what happens. And sometimes if the talent is really there and the father is real creative, like you have with Joe Calzaghe and his father, Enzo Calzaghe, who just passed away recently, you get this like style that's very hard to beat, and even, with Roy Jones Jr. and his father, that style that Roy had, that's what his father instilled when Roy was an amateur. And it worked because Roy was a once in a lifetime talent. And he was smart boxing wise. He understood distance and timing. He just didn't do it by the book. And that worked for him, But Danny Garcia he's not at that level of talent. You know what I mean? Like Shane Mosley and Jack Mosley. So Jack Mosley wasn't a boxer. He didn't come from a boxing background. But his son he was such a natural athlete and strong-willed and had a great chin that, that power boxing is what they called it. It worked for him for a very long time, Danny Garcia, not at that level of an athlete of a Shane Mosley, certainly not a Roy Jones Jr. or Joe Calzaghe, but I think that style he has worked for a long time, but he's been around long enough now. He's still young, but he's a veteran. People have figured, like, a world-class fighter knows how to beat him. And,
so do you see him as like a stepping stone fighter now, which is a dangerous?
I would never call Danny Garcia a stepping stone fighter. No, he's dangerous. I mean, he's fact dangerous.
Can he beat the elite fighters? Can you? I mean, what you say? I mean, is he the person that's always going to win, but when he gets in that elite fight,
you're right. You know what? He's a top contender.
He's a top contender.
He could be a belt holder again. But when you say elite fighter, okay, you're talking about Terrence Crawford.
Yes.
Like number 1 to number 3.
I think that's what he's aspiring to be.
Yes. You're talking about Errol Spence.
Yeah.
People have him in there pound for pound, right?
That's right.
You ask me who wins, Danny Garcia or Errol Spence, or Danny Garcia or Terrence Crawford. Man, I'm going for Bud Crawford and the truth. I'm going for Errol Spence. But he's I mean, for anybody else, if you're not elite, it's a hard night's work. Like Porter's not elite, but he's a legit top 5 or 6 contender. Same thing with Keith Thurman. He's a legit top 5 contender. And they beat him, but they just barely beat him.
One of the things I saw that was interesting.
He's not a stepping stone. He's not, you can't be like some prospect. Oh, I'm gonna make my name by fighting Danny Garcia. Garcia will ruin a prospect.
Where I saw Porter, though, I've seen Porter evolve. Meaning, in this fight, I saw more of him using his athleticism and boxing. I thought his bullying and his bullying was controlled. He felt part of a game plan.
Well, don't forget, he was a standout amateur.
Yeah.
He was one of the best at a much heavier weight too.
Yeah.
It feels like he's 65 pounds.
It feels like he's putting it together.
Yeah.
Some people have those losses and they start to realize the formula. And it felt like that. While watching that night, I was like, okay, I could see him now thinking through the game in a different way. And when he's
come to think of it, Sean Porter and Kenny Porter, that's another father and son team. His father was not an established boxing guy.
Yes.
And they definitely developed their own style as a professional. Very, very rugged, very awkward, very physical.
Mm-hmm.
But Porter is also a smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a student of the game, and he can box. He mixed in more of your standard traditional boxing
Mm-hmm.
with Garcia because he respected Garcia. And, you know, he knew he couldn't come in reckless. Garcia can clip you and hurt you.
Yeah. One of the things, and I was going to actually ask this a little bit later, but because you're talking about the importance of the trainer, you actually before the Canelo fight, you were up in Fresno watching a fight, and it was Jose Ramirez, who I hadn't really seen fight. I think he moved from wild card to start the fight with Garcia, and I hadn't really seen him fight, but I was impressed.
Yeah,
he's a great beast.
Yes, he is.
He gets after it. I mean, that's quite a camp they developing over there. And he's making some noise.
He's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, you were there at that fight, right?
No. I was in Vegas. I was just tweeting a lot. I was watching in my hotel room in Vegas.
So I know I see you up on Twitter as well.
Yeah, I love it. Was a great fight, and I'm really impressed with Jose Ramirez. You know, the guy he beat to win the WBC 140-pound title, Amir Imam. That guy's no joke.
Yes.
Amir Imam on a good night beats a lot of top 140-pounders, even 147-pounders.
Mm-hmm.
But Ramirez is going to be very difficult to beat because he could take a shot,
mm-hmm.
and he's a technical pressure fighter,
mm-hmm.
and he's a volume puncher.
Yes.
And it's real hard to outbox him
mm-hmm.
because he doesn't give you room to operate or the space to breathe. He sets such a fast tempo. He sets a fast pace, and he's working, but he's thinking in there. He's not just like a dumb, volume puncher. He's not just, I'm going to outwork you.
That's
he's
right.
throwing more than you, but he's really thinking about his punch placement. And if he hurts you somewhere, he's going to go back there. Like, he's always looking for places, how can I break you down?
Mm-hmm.
And when Orozco was being real defiant in the middle rounds and was trying to go to Ramirez's body, Ramirez started going to Orozco's body.
Yes.
And that really set up that knockdown that he scored in the middle of the fight. And he just stays on you. And if his chin holds out, because he's not a great athlete. He's not the slickest guy out there.
Yeah.
Not the most fluid boxer puncher out there. But he's got some snap on the end of his punches. He's got pretty good technique. He's got a good foundation. Technically speaking, he was an experienced amateur standout. He was a U.S. Olympian. He's got that experience. They got him, but what really sets him apart is that he'll work 3 minutes of every round.
Yeah.
But he's thinking. He's a thinking pressure fighter, kind of like Leo Santa Cruz proved to be. I used to think Leo Santa Cruz just went in there and wasn't thinking and was going to just outwork everybody. And he proved against Carl Frampton in that rematch that, no, he could mix it up a little bit.
He can mix it up. Well, I want to hit the big fight a little bit before I turn over here to Darnell a little bit to talk about some feature fights. Obviously, we had Triple G and Canelo. I had it 115, 113, Canelo.
That's fair.
And I mean, I think there can be arguments a lot of different ways in that fight.
And there's a lot of arguments out there, which is unfortunate. I did the online pay-per-view broadcast, and so I'm watching it live, doing the call. I had it 6 rounds apiece after 12 rounds. I thought they both did great things in there. Canelo stood his ground and went to the body and landed hellacious power punches. He was very accurate with his shots and economical. And Triple G did his jab thing. He out-jabbed him. Couldn't back up Canelo, but didn't allow Canelo to back him up because he circled him. Yeah. And he was turning, and he was the more active guy. So he was the boxer in there, really, and Canelo was more of the puncher. So it was kind of a role reversal from the first fight to an extent. And they both got a lot of really good work done in there. And it kind of reminded me of that first fight between Mike McCallum and James Toney, where McCallum was the guy in his mid-30s.
That's right.
And he was technical, and he was the jab master in there, and James Toney was the young buck, and he was throwing bombs. and standing his ground. And it was, and that fight was a draw.
Yep.
And it was disputed, people, but because of the history and the bad blood between Golovkin and Canelo,
yep,
and all what had happened since the first fight in that 1 year, it's like people can't accept. Like if you pick Golovkin to win that fight, or you like Golovkin, or you just don't like Canelo, you can't give him at least the people on my Twitter timeline, the hardcore fans, they can't give him credit, and they're pissed off.
Yep.
And it's like, it's too bad because the bitterness, because it was a tremendous fight. Yep. I think it's one of the best middleweight distance fights since James Toney, Mike McCallum won. And that's saying a lot, because that fight's a modern classic. So
that's my childhood friend right there, James Toney. So
yeah.
I respect that. We got a lot of love for him in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So then they send Triple G into the gulag to fight Charlo. They're like, you're going to have a tough road back.
I wonder if that happens. I don't know. I wonder if that fight happens.
You don't think it's going to happen? I'm just like.
Well, I don't see how the WBC can mandate that fight when Triple G doesn't have a title. You know what I mean? Charlo's got the interim belt.
Yeah.
And does Triple G want to fight for the interim belt? And I don't know. It could. I mean, if the money is there, and one thing we're going to find out next year, HBO's out of boxing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
So we have all these platforms that are actually really well funded and that have made a commitment to boxing. Showtime re-upped with the PBC for 3 years. Al Heyman also did a 4-year deal with Fox Sports, and with that deal, they're paying licensing fees, and there's marketing money with that. There's DAZN with Eddie Hearn, and they're not exclusive to Eddie Hearn, but he's their main guy. He's kind of like their promoter face for their boxing content outside of the World Boxing Super Series. And so, reportedly, they are committed for 8 years.
Wow.
And huge licensing fees. Who am I leaving out? ESPN. Good grief. How can I? ESPN. Yeah. They just re-up with Top Rank for 7 years.
Yep.
And they have this ESPN Plus platform, which they recently announced has 1 million subscribers. So obviously there's money there. So when you have these sanctioning bodies mandating fights or going, fights that go to purse bid or whatever, there's going to be a lot of money thrown at these fighters and these fights. So, if you're ESPN, you want Gennady Golovkin to fight on your platform.
Yeah.
You put him on ESPN Plus because you're going to get a lot of subscribers. Same thing with DAZN. Yeah. You have a Canelo Alvarez or a Triple G fighting on your platform, automatically you're going to get thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people signing up to watch this fight because these guys have diehard, dedicated fans. That's why nobody can agree on the score of that rematch, is because their fans are so diehard. It's like they can't be reasonable. You understand what I mean? So if there's enough money tossed at Golovkin Charlo to happen, the fight will happen. You know what I mean? But for the first time in 8 years, Triple G does not have a world title. So he doesn't have any sanctioning body obligations.
Yeah.
For years, he had to fight some guy that the IBF wanted him to fight. He had to fight some guy the WBA wanted him to fight. He had to fight some guy the WBC wanted him to fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he doesn't have that obligation. So he could literally say, okay, listen.
He could pull a Mayweather.
Whoever makes the biggest offer. What if this guy from Japan, Ryota Murata, if he wins this fight on the 20th, and the Japanese promoter says, we want you to fight, in Tokyo, and I'll pay you $10 million. He's not going to say no to that.
No.
He's going to be like, sorry. He's going to say, sorry, WBC, but I'm going over here. Or maybe the winner of the Danny Jacobs, Sergey Derevyanchenko fight. Okay. Jacobs is with Eddie Hearn.
Yeah.
The DAZN got a lot of money. It'll be like, okay, rematch, Golovkin versus Danny Jacobs. And we'll overpay you to get you on DAZN because we're trying to build up a subscription base here. So, Triple G has options. And they're all viable. It's like these guys he could fight. You know, he could shoot. He could fight Demetrius Andrade, you know what I mean, who's also with the Zone. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. If the money's there and he fights one of these guys and they're a legit, you know, middleweight contender, it's all good. But having said that, I would love to see Golovkin Charlo because I love big fights in Texas. Charlo is a Houston native. Triple G has never fought in Texas. I know Texas would welcome him. He's got a lot of fans there. That fight's a natural for the Toyota Center. They would sell it out easily. They could probably charge a lot for those tickets. I hope they wouldn't, but you know, they could put it in. Is it Candlestick Park?
Yep.
Is that where Canelo fought James Kirkland? I think it is. No, it's a Minute Maid Park.
Oh, down in
Houston. Yeah, it's Minute Maid, right? Yeah, it's a baseball park. Park. I think they could do it. If they wanted to, they could do it in a stadium.
They could do it in Jerry's house. It'll fill it up in Jerry's.
Jerry would welcome it there. Jerry would welcome that.
So what happened to HBO? I mean, how did HBO fall off? My boy Max Kellerman, the whole
ran out of money. They ran out of money. Listen, they were the 800-pound gorilla because they wrote the biggest checks and nobody could compete with them. And 10 years ago, it was the boxing unit, you know, in America. The network universe for premium boxing was just two sides of a street. It was HBO or Showtime. HBO and Showtime were the subscription cable networks that outbid the networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS in the late 80s and early 90s. And by the mid-90s, boxing was off of network television and exclusively the domain of HBO and Showtime. Mainly HBO because they had a huge budget. They had $100,000 an annual budget that sometimes exceeded $100 million. So nobody could compete with them, even when they didn't have the best leadership. I hear a lot of people blaming who's this guy, Peter Nelson.
Yeah.
He ruined it because he doesn't know what he's doing. And it's like, you know what? Outside of Ludabella, when Ludabella left HBO, like in 1999 or early 2000, like he was the smartest. He was like a real boxing guy. Like he was like, as far as matchmaking and getting it and knowing how to cultivate talent and knowing what boxing fans wanted, there's nobody that comes close to him. But when Ludabella had that position, you know, his boss was Seth Abrams. And Seth Abrams was he's a guy who loved boxing. So the higher ups in the corporate ladder, they supported boxing. And he had a budget to really work with. And the people, his successors also, I think a guy, his name was Kerry Davis. Kerry Davis doesn't know boxing more so than Peter Nelson. But when Kerry Davis was in that role, his only competition was Showtime. Yeah. And Showtime had like a quarter of the budget. So who's going to win? Whoever has the most money in boxing is going to get those fights, you know. But the landscape has changed so quickly and so drastically now.
You and I talked about that with Al Heyman. Yeah, I told you Al Heyman took it. You and I talked about what would be the impact.
I hear Peter Nelson getting blamed for that, but it was his boss. It was Ken Hirschman that really made that decision. Like, we're not going to work with the Heyman fighters, and it wasn't really about, at that time, it wasn't about Al Heyman. Yeah. It was a Richard Schaefer Golden Boy thing. Yeah. Heyman had all that talent with Golden Boy, and Golden Boy was one of the main providers of boxing content programming for HBO. But Schaefer was working both sides of the street, and I just think Hirschman got sick of, you know, Schaefer saying, you know, pay us what we want or we'll just go to Showtime. And he finally said, screw you, go to Showtime. And they did that, you know what I'm saying? So, but really, I mean, in the last 10 to 15 years, the budget for HBO's boxing programming has diminished as the budget has risen for Showtime. So they went from being the 800-pound gorilla to the 400-pound gorilla. And then there's another 400-pound gorilla right across the street with Showtime. And then what happened was ESPN got involved. Once Top Rank left to ESPN, They said, you know what? You're giving us world-class guys. It's not about Friday night fights anymore.
Yeah.
You're giving us pound-for-pound level talents like Terrence Crawford and Vasyl Lomachenko and a household name in Manny Pacquiao. Yeah. You're going to bring in viewers. We're going to spend the money. We're going to support this program, and we're going to be committed to you. So now that's another 400-pound gorilla. You know what I mean? And now you got the zone. You got all these gorillas. It's like. And if HBO can't be if they can't be the 800-pound gorilla, if they can't be number one, they don't want to do it. That's their whole brand is we're the best. We're simply the best. This is the home of championship boxing, yada, 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 pound for pound, all of that. And so if they couldn't have that, they just got out the game. And they no longer had the corporate support, especially with this merger with AT&T. It was more about, hey, let's not compete with Showtime to see who can put on the best fights. Let's compete with Netflix and see who puts on the best overall entertainment. And and they're thinking about comedians and original programming and concerts and that kind of stuff. So,
well, I'm gonna hand it over to the youngin. He's been excited about having you on here, so I'm gonna hand it to my man Darnell to talk to you a little about some upcoming stuff before we wrap it up here. I'll get it over to the young man. I'm gonna let you have the stage.
All right, I have a couple questions, man. The first one, I'm going to ask about what do you think about the Crawford versus Jose Benavidez fight?
I think it'll be an assault. I mean, God bless God bless Jose Benavidez because he stepped up to the plate. People don't want to fight Crawford. Yeah. Crawford is a handful, and he will outbox you and embarrass you like a Floyd Mayweather Jr., and he'll kick your ass. You know what I mean? It's like the worst of both worlds as far as, competition. You know what I mean? So a lot of guys don't want to fight him. Now, I'm saying, no, there are top welterweights who would fight him, but just politically right now, with the promotional and network affiliation, it's not going to happen anytime soon. The best fight in boxing, or one of the best fights in boxing to be made, is Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence. And I wouldn't mind seeing Terrence Crawford against Sean Porter or Keith Thurman. But those fights aren't going to happen anytime soon. Hopefully they happen down the line when enough money is on the plate to where maybe one of these platforms just outbids the other, and it's just worth it for all involved to do it. Or they do some kind of partnership the way occasionally HBO and Showtime would come together for a Tyson versus Lewis or a Mayweather versus Pacquiao. But in the meantime, Crawford's got to fight somebody. And Benavidez was talking that crap. So what's going to happen is going to happen. I mean, Benavidez he's not bad, and he's a dangerous young guy against fellow young guys, young guns. But Crawford's a complete fighter. He's got that experience. He's battle-tested. He's very smart, and he's real sadistic in there. So I see him outclassing Benavidez and giving him a beating. I don't think it goes the distance. Maybe it goes the distance. Benavidez is proud. I think his chin is pretty solid. I mean, he hasn't been that active. He was out of the ring for a while because he got shot. That's not a good thing. Now I'm thinking Crawford stops him. I think Crawford stops him by the late rounds. But I think by the middle rounds, Benavidez will be getting a beating though.
All right. With Canelo's next fight, he's fighting Rocky Fielding.
Rocky Fielding.
Okay. At 168.
Yes.
So what do you think is Canelo's direction with this? Because is he going to stay at 168 or is he coming back?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, he's like 5'9".
Yeah. He's shorter than Floyd.
He's not a big guy. I mean, he's pretty thick. I mean, he fills out. He's got big legs. He's definitely a middleweight, but he's not a big middleweight.
Right.
Triple G isn't a big middleweight, and I think Triple G is bigger than Canelo. So, no, it's not. 168 is not a natural weight for him. He fought over 160 when he fought Chavez Jr.
Right.
But Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. stopped being a real fighter a long time ago. So that fight almost doesn't count, really. Fielding will come to fight. Fielding will be slept on because he's a British guy, and he's not a higher level British guy, right? He's known in England, but he's never fought in the United States, so he's not going to be well respected over here. And he holds a WBA belt, but it's not a regular title. So he's a secondary. He's the JV title holder. So he's going to get, he's not going to get a lot of respect for that either. And about 6 fights back, I think he was knocked out in 1 round by Callum Smith. Yeah, who just won the Ring magazine and the WBA super middleweight title when he won the World Boxing Super Series by knocking out George Groves. But the thing is, I was always taught, I used to have a boxing trainer, a guy named Kevin Morgan, and he said anybody can be knocked out in the first round. That's why it's so important for fighters to be warmed up when they get in there and to be a little bit careful in the opening rounds, because when your body's cold and you get hit right, anybody can be knocked out. So a lot of times guys get knocked out in 1 round and people say, well, they're finished or they're never going to do anything. But, after being knocked out in 1 round, Amir Khan came back and went on a tremendous win streak and unified 2 140-pound titles and beat a number of top 10 contenders, from Paulie Malignaggi to Marcos Maidana, who was a puncher and a real threat, to Zab Judah and others. I mean, he was fighting real guys and he was beating them. And even the fight that he lost with Lamont Peterson, tremendous fight that he could have won, but he fought Peterson in Peterson's hometown. So just because you get knocked out in the first round doesn't mean your career is over. There was a Mexican fighter who fought for the WBC 130-pound title. His name is Miguel Berchelt. Right now, now that Lomachenko has left the junior lightweight division, I consider Miguel Berchelt to be the best junior lightweight in boxing. But he suffered a first-round knockout. So when he fought for the WBC title against Francisco Vargas, everybody wrote him off. But he had won a bunch in a row. He got his legs back, and he'd proven himself. And he shouldn't have been written off, but he was written off. And it was a tremendous fight with Francisco Vargas, but he wound up beating the hell out of Vargas. Right. And he's a formidable guy, and I wouldn't count him out against any 130-pounder. Just because you get knocked out in 1 round doesn't mean your career is over. Jorge Linares is another example. He got knocked out in 1 round. He came back and, won the lightweight title and went on a tremendous win streak and beat some really good guys and gave Vasil Lomachenko, many people's #1 pound-for-pound fighter, a real run for his money in May. So you can never count guys out just because they got knocked out in 1 round. So hopefully, Team Canelo isn't sleeping on this guy. I don't think they are, but they're definitely going to get more of a fight from this super middleweight than they did from Chavez Jr., I think.
Yeah, you brought up something when you brought up Miguel Berchelt. I was wondering, where is Gervonta Davis? Is he going to fight anytime soon?
I don't. He has a volatile relationship with his promoter, Floyd Mayweather, and I don't know. I think when they're on the outs, Mayweather sits him on the shelf. Because if you read his Twitter, it's like he says, "I want to fight. I'm ready to fight." But it's real cryptic what he says. He's like, they're trying to discourage me, or they're trying to take away my will. I don't know. I follow him on Twitter. I mean, I kind of want to write him, notes of encouragement or whatever, but I don't really want to get involved either. I'm not trying to choose sides. I don't know what the story is, but I like him. I mean, I think Gervonta Davis versus Berchelt, man, what a fight that would be. I mean, that would be tremendous. Yeah, it's too bad. I think Davis makes for many good fights at 130 pounds. I'd love to see him fight Tevin Farmer. I'd love to see him fight. I'd like to see him fight. If not Berchelt, then the guy that Berchelt beat to win the WBC title, Francisco Vargas. Because Vargas is vulnerable. He busts up real easy, but he's tough. He can take a punch. He can deliver a punch. He's a good technician. He mixes it up. He's been in 3 Fight of the Year candidates, Yeah, he's tremendous. I would love to see Tank against, a grizzled veteran, so to speak, like that. That's obviously still a world-class fighter.
Another question here. The Billy Joe Saunders versus Andre fight got canceled.
Yeah.
So you have any thoughts about
But,
that?
Andrade is fighting on April 20, though.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, he's fighting. He's fighting some other unknown guy, somebody from Africa. I think Namibia or something like that. Some dude. I never heard of him. He's got like a 17-0 record with 16 knockouts. And, you never know with those guys. You never know if it's a built-up record. If the power is real or how well they can box because they're literally invisible. Andrade's going to fight for the WBO interim title while Billy Joe Saunders pleads his case to the WBO, provides whatever evidence they need to prove that positive test was from some nasal spray or whatever like that. But if he can't prove that, he'll lose the belt. And, whoever wins between Andrade and this dude from Africa, that'll be, he'll be installed as the WBO middleweight title holder. But it's a bummer. It's a bummer because, Saunders not one of my favorite fighters because he's, he just seems like a jerk, But, I was in Montreal or right outside of Montreal in December when he undressed David Lemieux. And, I'll tell you, when he takes a fight seriously and he's dialed in, that guy's hard to beat. I could see on a good night, I could see him giving Gennady Golovkin fits. And I can see him giving Canelo Alvarez fits. I can see him giving the best guys fits, beating them even. I really can. He's that good. Yeah. But it's kind of karma because, when Canelo popped positive for that Clenbuterol, he was out. He was loud. He came at him hard saying, lost all respect for him, and he's definitely a cheater. He's been cheating, and he should be banned for life. And I said it in my mailbag. I was really talking to the fans. I was like, you guys need to give Canelo the benefit of the doubt in here, or at least allow due process to work out. Because if you don't, if you set this standard where you condemn somebody as soon as they test positive, sooner or later, a guy you like is going to test positive. Because if you're being tested by VADA, whatever's in your system, I don't care how minute the trace, it's going to come out. And if you didn't care what it was or how much of it was in Canelo's system, or you didn't care about due process with Canelo, you can't all of a sudden care about those things for some other fighter, which is what you see with boxers. You don't see them taking Tyson Fury to task or Alexander Povetkin to task or these other guys that have tested positive more than once in the past. You don't see them do that with them. And they're still mad at Canelo, even though he's signed up with VADA for 24/7 or whatever. It's like they're still mad at him, but that's not. I think that's biased, to be quite honest. So in a way, it's like, all right, Billy Joe Saunders kind of set that tone, was kind of part of that climate of zero tolerance, and it looks like it bit him in the ass.
Do you think the Dylan White versus Luis Ortiz fight is going to happen? I saw them going back and forth.
I could see that. Yeah, I definitely can see that fight happening. The money, like I said, if the money's there for it, and Dillian White is an Eddie Hearn fighter, and see, Eddie Hearn's he's smart. He's got the TV deal in the UK, which pays a handsome licensing fee. In fact, a lot of those fights, even Dillian White fights in the UK, are pay-per-view. Now they're not asking for like the equivalent of $85. They're asking for the equivalent in British pounds of like $25 or something like that. So it's not quite as bad, but he's still robbing them. He's getting a lot of money. Plus, though they have those fights at the O2 Arena and they sell out
all the time.
He's making money on the gate, and then here now he's got a platform in the US with the Zone that's also paying a handsome licensing fee. So the money should be there for that fight to happen. And one thing about Dillian White, he doesn't seem leery of facing, top contenders. Like, he wants to challenge himself. And he's not one of those guys who gets like kind of high on the totem pole in the rankings. He doesn't get to like number one in the WBO or WBC and then sits on that ranking and not wanting to risk it. Like, he'll fight dangerous fights even though he's highly ranked, So I respect White. I really do. And if he fights the Cuban, if he fights Luis Ortiz, that's a dangerous fight. That's a very good fight. I like it a lot. I don't know who wins that fight.
Well, who do you think wins the Fury versus Wilder fight coming up?
I gotta favor Deontay. It just seems like it's too soon for Tyson Fury to come back. I mean, he was gone. He was out of the ring. He wasn't just out of the ring for more than 2 years. He let himself go. You know, for about 1 year of those 2 years out of the ring, he was abusing his body. I mean, he was drinking, he was snorting, he was definitely eating like a pig. He wasn't training. He had a lot of psychological, mental health issues. And to his credit, and I like Fury. To his credit, he got that stuff under control, and he worked himself back into shape over the second year of that hiatus. But from what I saw in his 2 comeback fights, he's not there yet. You know, the first fight, the victory was just stepping into the ring. And quite frankly, he looked disinterested against that cruiserweight.
Yeah, Cipher.
And in the second weight, fighting the German guy, a little bit of a bigger dude, you know, a guy who was a prospect at one time. Pianetta, I think that's his name.
Francisco Pianetta,
yeah. Yeah. That looked like a sparring session. I mean, those 10 rounds that he went with that dude looked like he was shaking rust and just working his body out and trying to find his rhythm and his timing. And he regained a little bit of it. But it's still, to me, he's not back yet. And to me, he still hasn't been tested the way you want to be tested before you go in with, like, you know, the #1 heavyweight in the world, or at worst the #2 heavyweight in the world. Definitely the most, you know, offensive, the most dangerous heavyweight, the hardest puncher, the most explosive heavyweight right now, and that's Deontay Wilder. So I don't know. I just think it's a little bit too soon. I think sooner or later Deontay clips him, he catches him. You know, but I mean, having said that, I can see a scenario where Deontay gets frustrated because Fury he can get under your skin, he can get into your mind. He moves very well for a big man, and he's bigger. He's taller and rangier than Deontay Wilder. Wilder's not used to that. He's not used to somebody talking back to him, too.
Right.
He's not used to somebody showing zero fear and, like, saying, I'm going to make you look like a bum, and really believe it. When Fury says that stuff, it's not bluster. Whether it's true or not, we don't know, but I think he believes it. You know, when Fury believes what he says, and that's part of what makes him special. That's why he was able to upset Vladimir Klitschko. It takes a very special person to go into the lion's den against a great champion, a future Hall of Famer, and do what Fury did. I mean, he pretty much clowned his way to the heavyweight title. But he also got some work done in there. He also showed some ring generalship in there. He hit Klitschko hard enough to where Klitschko respected him. So, I mean, you know, he's not a knockout puncher by any stretch of the imagination, but when you're 6'8", 6'9", and, you know, in shape, you're going to carry 250 pounds, just arm punches are going to eventually tell on your opponent when you're going round. So, who knows if Tyson Fury can evade Deontay Wilder's best shots for 5 rounds, and he can frustrate Deontay Wilder, his chances are good to taking that 12 rounds and winning a decision. But 12 rounds is a long time to share the ring with Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Just ask Luis Ortiz.
Right. He was winning that fight.
You can be outclassing him. You can be outboxing him, and he can land that one shot and just turn everything around.
Might as well put a pillow in the middle of the floor.
Yeah. He can knock out – Wilder can knock out anybody he doesn't have to land flush either. No. If he just lands in the vicinity, it's going to do damage.
He knocked Stavern down through his gloves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, you know, Stavern in that rematch, I mean, he might as well have been a heavy bag. Yeah, that was sad. But, yeah. But no, you don't want to get hit by the dude. He can seriously hurt you. Wilder's dangerous. Wilder's definitely the most dangerous heavyweight out there, which is saying a lot because Anthony Joshua is also dangerous. He's formidable. And he's a good finisher himself.
Well, I tell you, this has been good. And Darnell, you did an excellent job here.
I hope I answered those questions and didn't just.
Oh yeah, you did, man.
You did your thing.
You know, Darnell, you had asked about Canelo. You asked, what does this fight mean against Rocky Fielding? I don't think I answered that directly. I just think it's a stay busy fight. I just think it's he just wanted to come back this year, so he could fight twice in one calendar year. I think that, and I think it's good in boxing when the biggest stars fight often. They can come back that soon. He fought in September and he's coming back in December. That's good. And you know, obviously he'll fight again in May, but I'd like to see Canelo, you know, he's just 28 years old. I'd like to see him fight more than twice a year. I'd like to see him fight 3 times a year. So it would be great if this becomes a tradition for him, you know, fighting in May, September, and December. It would be great if Anthony Joshua fought, you know, 3 times a year.
Yeah. One of the things we want to talk about, because as we close out the show, first of all, thank your daughters for allowing us to take.
Oh yeah, they're on mobile devices. They have no concept of time right now.
We love it.
But I gotta cook them dinner. Yeah,
I look forward to being able to come out there. I hope you can work with me. I can get out there for that Wilder fight. So
absolutely.
Do some
work for us. Yeah, do some work for the ring. Yeah,
I'll come out and do it with you. You know, I want to, as closing out the show, I talked to Darnell about this, and I said, look, Dougie doesn't do pound for pound. He's gonna mess around with that. The rest of the industry will get into pound for pound. I found out early on he just don't work with that. So I had to reframe it. I had to find another way to get him to talk about the concept without doing the pound for pound. So that's why I came up with the Mount Rushmore. And I actually had Darnell do the Mount Rushmore of what you say of active fighters. We're not ranking them, but if you had to create your own Mount Rushmore of fighters right now, put on your Mount Rushmore.
Oh, you know, it changes depending on the time of year, right? You know, so like if a top guy hasn't fought in a while or hasn't been fighting top opposition in a while, he kind of falls off that mountain, off that list.
That's what I feel
right now, first and foremost, I got to put the monster, Naoya Inoue, who entered the World Boxing Super Series Bantamweight tournament. He had his second fight at 118 pounds on October 7 in Japan, and he knocked out Juan Carlos Payano in 70 seconds with a beautiful 1-2 combination. The speed and the angle and the timing and the technique and the fact he didn't even get full extension on that right hand. And when he caught that dude, Payano he got paralyzed, fell flat on his back, and he was done. And that dude had always shown a good chin, always. And that dude has beat some really good fighters. Had never been knocked out. The guy that Inoue knocked out in his bantamweight debut, Jamie McDonnell, that dude had never been stopped. Took him out in 1 round. So right now, this little guy who was the title holder at 108 and at 115, and now he's making a run to not just be a title holder at 118, but to be a unified title holder by winning this tournament. I mean, that's pound for pound stuff. That's elite fighter stuff. So Inoue is definitely on there. I'll put the undisputed cruiserweight champ, Alexander Usyk. Put him on there. Terrence Crawford is getting ready to fight this Saturday. Complete fighter. He can do it all. He can fight coming forward, backwards. He reminds me of an old school fighter. He reminds me of a fighter from the 70s or 80s. Kind of reminds me of Bernard Hopkins. In some ways, but Bernard Hopkins, when Bernard still had the athleticism.
And he's the only one giving Nebraska people hope because the Cornhuskers aren't.
That's what I hear. I don't know nothing about other sports, but I hear Nebraska's football program.
That's about all.
Not what it was. Not what it's supposed to be, right?
That's right.
Yeah, not what it's supposed to be. And then I'll go with Anthony Joshua, just because he is like Canelo Alvarez, a stadium fighter.
Yes.
In the UK, not here in America, but in the UK, he fills stadiums. And he fought the ring's number 3 contender, a former WBA title holder, and Alexander Povetkin.
Yeah, that was a good fight.
Povetkin was a world amateur champ,
Yep.
and like Joshua, an Olympic gold medalist, and probably the most accomplished heavyweight veteran out there. And man, hats off to the Russian.
Yep.
He came to win.
He came to win. He did.
And he shook him a little bit
Yes.
at the end of the first round, busted that nose up, and Joshua kept that composure, kept the jab on him, and really, really boxed like a mature fighter. But he was breaking the Russian down, and as soon as the Russian began to wobble a little bit, he jumped on him, and he closed the show. And he was perfect in that finishing execution, and he was perfect behind the mic during the post-fight interview.
Oh, yeah, he was unbelievable.
I mean, it's like an actor or something. So, he's good for boxing. He's a real good ambassador for the sport. Yeah, definitely holding it down in Europe. Hopefully, it's only a matter of time before he comes to the United States. And we have.
I think he has crossover appeal. I think cats are jonesing for him to come on over.
Sure.
I think once he gets a taste of the Barclay,
he
gets a taste of Vegas.
Yeah, he should fight in New York, the New York area. He should fight in L.A. He should fight in Vegas. If they can get him in Texas at the AT&T Stadium, do it.
He gonna love that. He think he got it going now.
I think he'll bring fans over. He'll be like Ricky Hatton. He'll bring 30,000 Brits with him. So that's always good. We need guys like that. We need fighters like that they're beyond arena fighters. They're stadium fighters. And it helps when they can be entertaining and well spoken and classy. Those are my guys.
Wow. And you gave me a new term now. I'm gonna start. We got a new category we go about to hit. I'm about to ask you, who are the stadium fighters? That's gonna be my new thing.
Well, right now we only have two. It's Canelo Alvarez and Povetkin. And lucky for us, they're 28 years old.
Yes.
And
I think
they got years ahead of them.
And I think, depending on how they market them, Bud Crawford, a couple people, depending on how they start to bring them along, they got the stadium fighter ability.
Yeah.
Now we got to get them marketing. How do you, get them?
Yeah, that's Crawford's top rank in ESPN. I mean, they've got the platform now. Yeah. I think really the trick with Crawford is have him fight often. Yeah. Have him fight more than twice a year.
Yeah.
And be creative with his opponents. Like reach across that aisle. Try to get guys from other platforms. Make it worth their while.
Yeah.
To come over. And genuinely and honestly beat the drums for an eventual showdown with Errol Spence, because general American sports fans will get excited about that fight because it's two Americans who are on top of their game and they're undefeated, and they're not just really good boxers, they're killers. Like they are destroyers. So you can get excited for that. Even if you're not a boxing fan, you can get excited for that. You see their highlights, you're like, okay, I think I want to see this.
Yeah, that's Leonard Hagler. That's Hagler Hearns type stuff. Sure. I mean, that's like
the cover of magazines. That's what you would put. If Sports Illustrated still covered boxing like they used to, that's the kind of fight that they would put on the cover. Certainly, if that fight is made, Ring will put that on the cover.
Oh, we know that.
We'll put it on the cover if they just talk about it enough,
Well, brother, you've been more than generous with your time. We always enjoy having you on. We definitely going to have you on more on this platform that we're doing here on RSG. Look forward to the opportunity to collab and be part of whatever you're doing at Ring Magazine.
Thank you.
It's just been there's so much I learn when you come on and you share with our listeners and the folks who are checking us out. We really appreciate you. You bring it every time. We have the mic, and we wish you well on all you do. And
thank you.
Before we leave, can you let folks know where they can find you, and what's on your next issue?
All right, look for the Ring Magazine in finer bookstores and drugstores across the nation. RingTV.com is the website. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Periscope at Dougie Fischer. So DOUGIEFISCHER. You can also email me for the mailbag, Dougie@boxingmailbag.com.
And we'll have that information at the end of this content on whatever platform you're listening to. So we'll make sure that we cover
subtitles,
the titles and everything else on this one. But thank you, my brother. Until next time, be blessed, and thank you for being on RSG, The Cipher.
Thank you, guys. Anytime.